recording the class, just in case there's people that want to watch the class later. So this is the fabric gift bag class. We're making these small gift bags today with a lining. They are lined, fully lined, and they have a 2 full drawstring. Next week, we'll make a larger version. So first, I'm helping everyone get their fabric cut. It's very straightforward. You'll need your ruler and some chalk. So I've already cut 1 piece. You'll need 2 pieces because it's lined. So here's the piece I've already cut. So obviously, right sides together. Mary, I know you're new with us, so some of the rules of sewing are when you cut out fabric, you always put right sides together. So you're gonna fold right sides together because this end right here is on the fold. There's no seam here at the bottom. So the bottom of the bag right here, this part, there's no seam down here. There's only 2 side seams. So there's no seam. So we want this to be on the fold. So when it's cut out, it's going to look like this. It's 2 pieces of fabric with a fold at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead. I've already cut my, that's my lining piece. Now I'm going to cut my outside piece. Welcome, Raj. Good to see you. So what you're going to do is you're going to fold your fabric up. So you're going to, your grain line is going to be on the side here, like this. That's your selvage edge. If you have any questions, Mary, just ask. Okay. Interrupt me, raise your hand, ask me. But the selvage edge is this funky little edge, if you don't know, and you want that to be on the side. That's your length grain. And you fold it in half, and it's going to be 12 inches going the long side, this long side here, it's 12 inches. So I'm just using a ruler and chalk, and I'm measuring 12 inches up. So I'm hoping that you can see this. So I have my ruler at the bottom of the fabric here on the fold, and I'm measuring up here 12 inches, and then I'm just marking all the way across 12 inches. And then the width of it is 9.5. So I'm just turning my ruler. Once I have this 12-inch line in, I'm laying my ruler horizontally, and I'm measuring 9.5 across. Yeah, 9.5. And I'm just drawing that line in all the way up. And then I'm just gonna use my ruler to true up those those little dashes that I drew across to make my line. And then I just double check to make sure, is it 9.5 all the way across? And make sure it's 12 inches long. And now I'm going to cut it out. Again, make sure you have a fold down here. There's no seam. So when you open it up, it's actually 24 inches long. Okay. So I just snip off my small scraps and throw them away, and the rest I fold up for something, a project for later. So you'll need to do that 2 times. You'll need to have your outside I'm going to call the outside the body fabric, and the inside is the lining. So my body fabric is red, and my lining is going to be my penguin print. Welcome, Pauline. Welcome, Raj. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Morning. Again, we have a full class, even people on a waiting list to join, 3 people, but a lot of people haven't shown up. So, okay. All right. Well, I'll give you guys a few minutes to cut this out. I'll give you about 5 more minutes till 10:51. I know that Raj and Pauline have just joined, so I'm going to put up the measurements again. So we're making, I'll just repeat it again. We're making 2 fabric gift bags, 2 different styles. If one style is smaller, I'm calling it small, and it's lined. It's fully lined on the inside, and it has a 2-pole draw. And we're making this one today. We're just making 1 bag today. The next time we meet on the 20th, we will make the large bag. It's quite a bit larger. It's unlined, so it has raw seams, and it has a bow in the front. It has a different drawstring style, and it's unlined. So right now, though, we're just focusing on the small one, and I want you guys to cut out your fabric. So you'll need to have a body fabric and a lining fabric. So the small bag is 9.5 inches wide, and it's 12 inches long. So that's on the fold, though. If it's unfolded, it's actually 24 inches long. So if it's much easier to take your fabric and fold it up. So the length grain is on this side. If you lay out your fabric, here's your selvage edge, and then fold your fabric up 12 inches and lay it right sides together, and then cut a 12-inch tall piece, 9.5 inches wide, just like this. And you need 2 of them. And then you'll when you open it up, it's actually 24 inches long. So the bag does not have a seam on the bottom. There's no seam on the bottom. So that's why we want to have that fold. It just makes things a little faster, a little easier. When you're trying to save time, if you have enough fabric, you can fold it, and that's a seam you don't have to sew. If you don't have enough fabric to do it like that, then you would have to have a seam there. So go ahead and cut your 2 pieces. I'll give you a few more minutes. The measurements for the large bag are posted as well. It's a little bit different. That bag is folded on the side. So you don't need to cut it right now, but I put it up there so you could have the measurements if you need to buy more fabric, or if you're trying to figure out if you have enough fabric, then you can, have that information. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the measurements. I can always give you the info if you need it. So this project for you guys that are my regular sewing club folks, it's going to be pretty easy. It's pretty fun and easy to do. So you'll enjoy, you know, following along. If this is a perfect project for someone who's a beginning sewer, it's pretty straightforward. Does anyone have any questions? Have any of you finished cutting out your fabric?
I finished.
You're done, Mary? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, great. So you have two pieces that look like this? Okay, great. So the next step, you're going to need a ruler and some chalk or a fabric pen. We're going to leave, we need to mark the holes in the seam allowance. So on the lining fabric, you're going to leave a 4-inch opening. And that's so that when we turn it inside out, we can get our hand inside. So you want to leave the 4-inch opening right here. So let's look at our lining fabric, pull it over, take your ruler and measure 4 inches up from the bottom and just put a little mark with your chalk. Oops, that was 3 inches, 4 inches. Put a little mark with your chalk or your fabric pen, because we're not going to sew this hole right here, this 4 inches here. We want to leave that open. We are going to sew from the 4-inch mark all the way up to the top. And then on the other side, we're going to sew the entire side on the other side. So, and we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So after you've made that mark for 4 inches, you can put that aside because now we need to mark the body fabric. So the body fabric, we're going to have 2 marks on each side. So the first mark is 1 3/4 inches down from the top of your fabric. So here's the top of my fabric, and I'm measuring 1 3/4 inches down, and I'm putting a mark because I don't want to sew this little opening that we're going to mark. So from the 1 3/4, we're going to do, from that line, we're going to do 3/4.
So from the top or the bottom?
From the top. Well, 3/4 is measured from the line that you just drew. So there's 2 lines. One line, the first line is 1 3/4 from the top. The second line is 3/4 from that first line you drew. So it looks like this. And you'll do the same thing on the other side. So the other side looks like this.
Did you say 1 3/4 and 3/4?
Yeah, so 1 3/4 from the top. And then 3/4 of an inch from that line that you just drew. So it looks like this. And you do it on both sides. Both sides. So after you've done that, then you go to the sewing machine. So what we're gonna do is you go to the sewing machine. I'm gonna use some pins because I like pins. I mean, if you're feeling super brave and your fabric's not gonna move, you don't need to pin, but I'm just gonna use a couple pins. So what we're gonna do at the sewing machine is we're gonna sew 1/4 inch. We're using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you're gonna sew from the top to this line right here, the first line. And then you're gonna stop and you're gonna pull your needle out and you're gonna put your needle in here, down here at the second line. And then you're gonna finish sewing all the way down. So this little opening, this little hole here, that does not get sewn. You do not want to sew this. You want to leave it open. You do the same thing on the other side. This is your opening for your drawstring. Okay, so you want to leave that open. So you're going to take that to your sewing machine and sew both sides, just like I said. And then you're going to also sew your lining. You're going to sew this side all the way down 1/4 inch. And then the other side, you're only going to sew up to that 4 inch mark because you want to leave this hole. So I'm going to put some pins in and then run over to my sewing machine and sew. I recommend, picking a thread color that matches the outside of your fabric. Or if you don't have anything that matches, use whatever you have. So after I put my pins in, I'm gonna go sew. You guys can go sew when you're ready, and then I'll come back to the screen. Can you guys, do you have any questions? Okay. All right, I'm gonna go to my sewing machine and I'll be right back when I'm done. I'm gonna do both my lining and my body at the same time. I'm gonna leave my 4 inch opening on my lining and then my 2 little 3/4 of an inch openings on my body fabric. Feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Always remember to back stitch at the top and at the beginning and the end of a stitch. Okay, I finished sewing up my bags on the sides, the side seams. And now I'm gonna press the seam open. So obviously it's a little difficult to get in all the way back there. So I'll show you what you can do, a little cheat that I've learned. It just makes it look better to have the seams pressed open. I also have one of these. You guys have seen me use these. We have it in the makerspace, but I know most of you don't have it at home. But if you do, you can just slide your bag in and then you can get the seam open. But if you don't have something like that, then what you can do is just.
Amy, can you go back? I got confused. You said to sew 4 inches, don't 4 inches, leave a quarter, 3/4 of an inch without sewing and then sew below there?
Yeah,
Or-
yeah, no worries, Pauline. So what you're gonna do is, I'll show you again. This is the lining fabric. On the
Okay.
lining fabric, you're gonna leave a 4-inch opening here at the bottom.
Okay,
Okay, so this is the top of your bag. You're gonna sew one side all the way down, 1/4 inch seam allowance. The other side, you're gonna leave a 4-inch opening at the bottom. This is the
Oh.
lining.
oh, this is a lining, okay.
On the lining, I'm using this colorful little penguin print for my lining. On the lining, I will type it into the chat too. I'll type in lining. So 1/4 inch seam allowance and leave a 4-inch opening, oops, at the bottom of one side.
Okay, opening at the bottom of one side.
So you leave this 4-inch opening on one side. That's so that you can get your hand in when we turn it inside out or right side out. Is that clear?
Yeah, that's clear.
Okay, so now we're gonna go to the body fabric. The body fabric is gonna have 2 little openings on each side right here. So it looks like this. You're gonna draw a line 1 inch and 3/4 from the top, and I'll type it in. 1.75 inches from the top. Then draw another line 3/4 inches from that first line. So this line is 1 3/4 from the top. Then the second line is 3/4 of an inch below it. So it looks like this. And you're gonna leave that open. You're not gonna sew. So see, I can get my finger in there, barely. But it's open. You don't sew in that little opening there. And you do the same thing on the other side. Leave it open when you sew, okay?
Okay.
Does that make sense? Are you good, Pauline?
Yes, I'm good.
Okay. So I'm just gonna go back to my ironing board and iron. Are any of you done sewing and ironing yet? Let me know so I don't go too fast. So the way you can iron if you can't if you don't have that sleeve edge, is I just lay it on the ironing board flat like this, and then you can just fold back one side of the seam allowance. I mean, it's totally cheating. But for a little bag like this, it's perfectly fine. For a garment, I don't like making cheating like this on the garment, but for a little bag, something kind of crafty like this, I think this is a nice little cheat. So I just pull this seam back and iron it open like that. And you can't get to the corner here. You can't iron that open. So you just go as far as you can. So I'm going to do that on all of my seam allowances on both the lining and the body. I'm going to press them open. Pressing the seams open just always makes whatever you're sewing look better, and it's easier to sew, obviously, the seams and everything together. And then on the lining where the opening is, I just went ahead and pressed that back because it'll make it easier when we sew it closed. All right, so I finished ironing my seam allowances open. Do any of you have any questions? Should I wait? Are you ready for me to keep going? Mary, I'm gonna pick on Mary. Can you show me what you have so far?
I'm ironing the pieces, or yeah, I'm ironing them.
Oh, okay, great. How about Melissa? She's still sewing. Okay. Raj, are you following along or are you just watching? No, Raj. Okay, well, I know Mary's ready, so I'll go ahead and Melissa and Pauline, I can always repeat it if you're not, if you miss something while you're sewing. All right, so after you've ironed your seams open, then you're gonna go ahead and turn your lining right side out. So again, my penguins are my lining. I know it's deceiving. I already made a bag with the penguins on the front. So now I'm going to make one with the red polka dots on front. All right, so turn your lining right side out and you want to push the corner out as well as you can. If you want to iron it again and give it a press again, you could. I'm going to skip that step, but you could go back and give it a good press. You're supposed to do that. And then you put your lining in, put your hand in it like an oven glove, and then you take your body fabric, which is inside out, and you place your oven glove, the lining inside like this. So you just take your hand and push it and put it inside. So when you do that, then you have right sides together because we're going to sew the lining to the body fabric, right? Because we want these two to be sewn together like this. So I put the lining inside and I have right sides together now, and I'm going to match my seams. So I have these side seams, one on my body fabric and one on my lining, and they're right sides together like this. And I'm going to match the seams up and pin. I'm going to do that all the way around. First, I'm going to match the seams on both sides and then pin all the way around. So we do this whenever we line something. We've done a lot of bags and in the sewing club, and whenever we line something, and this is the same process that we do over and over, we sew the lining and then we sew the body and then we sew them together just like this. So I pinned both seams and now I'm going to pin. If you cut correctly, it should match up perfectly. So we're going to stick with the 1/4 inch seam allowance throughout this whole project. So once you get it pinned, then you're going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance to sew these two pieces together. Always sew from the inside of a circle. It's so much easier that way. We're going to get lots of practice of sewing circles today. Okay, so I've pinned all the way around the top. And now what you do is you go to your sewing machine, and I always like to put my needle in right around the seam right here. So I usually start somewhere like behind that seam allowance or in front of it. It just is easier because if you start on the seam allowance, sometimes your needle kind of like gets hung up on that thickness. So I usually start like a 1/2 inch behind or a 1/2 inch in front. And then you want to sew inside the circle. This is what I mean by inside the circle. I'm sewing with my lining fabric up and I'm stitching right along here. That's inside. So I'm turning my fabric like this. So if I was sewing the outside of the circle, I'd be laying my fabric down like this and putting the needle in here and sewing like that. And that's awkward. It's better to be inside. Put your needle right here on the inside, and then you can turn your fabric like this. Here, I guess I should move it this way.
Yeah, I got my fabric. The outside is supposed to be like this.
Could Mary, could you turn your background off? Because it's hard to I can't see your project. I'm seeing the background.
I don't know how to do that.
Oh, because I want to help you.
Well, I have the fabric right side up. So I have the fabric, and then I have but you have it the other way. Okay.
So this is my body fabric right here.
Okay, I did the wrong way.
This is the body and this is the lining. So
it's opposite way.
body fabric is inside out, and then the lining fabric, you turn right side out and you stick it inside like this. Can you lay your project on the table and then like point your camera down so I can see what you're doing? Maybe, does that work? Oh,
you see
now
it?
I just see the background.
Oh,
Oh, well. Did you figure it out?
I'm trying to see. So they're both opposite way. Okay, I got it now.
The goal is you want to have these right sides of the fabric touching each other, right? This is the right side and this is the right side. That's what's touching each other.
So the inside goes on the inside bag and the outside goes on the outside bag.
Yeah. Here. So you just, the goal is you always want to have this right, when you're sewing two pieces of fabric together, right? Just like we sewed the side seams, you want to have the right side, the side that's going to show touching the right side of the other fabric. Did I explain? Did you understand?
Yes.
I know sometimes it's confusing them. So it doesn't matter. You could have the lining fabric showing right now, and you could have the body fabric on the inside. Either way, it doesn't matter. You just have to have right sides together. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Does yours look like mine right now?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm looking at a seam and a seam that's showing on the
Yes.
outside on both sides, right?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, cool. I'm gonna go sew mine around. Do you need help with that? Do you want to watch me on the sewing machine?
Nope. Got it.
Are you
It's a
good?
1/4 inch, right?
Yeah, 1/4 inch, just all the way around. Try to keep your seams open when you go over them. Sometimes they want to bunch up underneath the presser foot, but hopefully the pins hold it in place. Make sure you backstitch always at the beginning and the end of sewing. So I finished sewing the lining to the body and it looks like this. So I have my 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around like that. And you could try to press that seam open, but we're gonna skip that. If you want extra credit, go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go ahead and do it because it'll just make it a little easier. It'll look nicer, that edge. So I'm gonna do it without my special little sleeve edge ironing board, and I'm gonna do it the way I showed you, how you just fold. You can lay it flat and just fold one end back, and I'm just giving it kind of a rough iron. I can't get all the way in there, but I can do a pretty good job. And then you can turn it the other way and press the rest of it. Okay, so after the lining and the body are sewn together, you can just pull the lining out and put your hand in that hole. And I like, before I sew up the hole, I just like to turn it right side out and look at it, make sure everything looks good. Also, while the hole is open, you can get in there and punch out the corners. So you can't do that if you sew that hole up right away. So punch out the corners. So my red polka dot fabric is my body fabric. I know it's, I don't want you guys to get confused. This is going to be the right side, the outside of my bag. And I want the corners to be nice and crisp. And I'm even going to iron it a little bit. Lining fabric. So now we're going to close up. I'm just going to iron it really fast though, again. And I'm going to take my hole and I'm going to turn those raw edges in. And I'm going to iron that down. So I just folded those raw edges together and laid it like this. And I'm going to press it because then we'll go to the sewing machine and stitch right here on top to close that. And I'm just giving it a good press all the way, all over the bag, just pressing all the seams out so it looks nice and neat. And I'm even going to put a little pin right here where my hole is. So I've ironed the raw edges inside like that. And I'm going to put a little pin here so it's easier to sew. And I'm just going to stitch this hole closed right here. So right on top, I have red thread, so it's going to show. But since this is my lining, I don't really care. So if you care, you might want to change your thread color. But I'm going to have a little red thread going here to close it up. After I close up the hole, then I'm just going to push my lining inside to the interior. And you can look at your bag and you can see you've got these, you should have these holes right here where we left it open in the seam allowance. I'll use my scissor. Should have these little openings. See, I have one right here. And I have one on this side. So make sure you have those little openings because that's where our drawstring is going to go. We have these nice little openings. You should have back stitched really well on both sides. Remember, you always back stitch at the beginning and back stitch at the end. So as long as these are back stitched, this hole should stay nice and secure. So I have my two holes. And now I'm just gonna go sew up the opening in my lining. So I finished sewing that hole up. It's closed now. Looks like this. So my lining's finished and clean, and I'm just going to push it inside to the bag. Pauline and Melissa, how are you doing? Are you guys sewing?
Sewing,
Sewing?
sewing, ironing.
Okay, so I won't bother you then. I've put the lining inside my bag, and now I'm going to press. So I just want this edge here to be nice and crisp. So I'm going to iron it all the way around. I still have my openings here. So I'm going to do the pressing. After I'm done pressing, then I'm going to show you, we're going to stitch 2 lines all the way across the bag. 1 line above the hole and 1 line below the hole. So that's these stitch lines. When your bag's finished, it's going to have these 2 stitch lines, 1 here and 1 here, and that's holds the drawstring in place. And it creates this little ruffle when you pull it closed. So that's after I go to the ironing board. I'll come back and show you guys how to do that. We're almost done. After we iron this, and then we do the 2 stitches around the edge, then we'll insert the drawstring and you'll be done. Okay, before I show you this next step, you guys, I have to take a little bathroom break. I'm gonna run to the bathroom. I'll be right back. But you should have these openings here for your drawstring. Unfortunately, mine got kind of small. Sometimes if you stitch 1 or 2 stitches over your little mark, you know, you end up, but I know that it's still gonna fit in there because our drawstring's only, I think it's only like a 1/2 inch or less. Yeah, it's like 3/8 wide, so it should fit. Just make sure that your hole is big enough, we're gonna put this drawstring through it. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. Thank you. I apologize for that. So now what you're going to do is you're going to draw. Well, actually, you're not going to draw. You're going to measure, because we don't want to get marks on our outside of our bag. I want you guys to measure from the top of your bag, just like I'm doing, down to the top of the hole. So mine is 1.5 inches. And then you're going to write that down. So I'm just writing mine down and drawing myself a little picture. And then you're going to measure from the top of your fabric to the bottom of the hole. And the bottom of my hole is about 2.5 inches. So you want to make sure that you don't want to cut your hole off. We're going to stitch a line at the top of the hole and at the bottom of the hole. And on everyone's bag, it might be a little bit different, just depending on, how if you sew a little bit off, the number changes. So that's why I want you guys to measure. I don't want to give you an across the board number. So mine is 1.5 inches to the top of the hole. So I don't actually want to stitch that close to the hole. I'm only going to, I think I'll stitch 1.25 inches. That way it gives me some room. I want to have room for that drawstring. So it's 1.5 inches to the top of the hole, and I'm going to back it up 1/4 inch. So I'm only going to, write 1¼ inches from the top. And then to the bottom of the hole, it's 2¼ but I'm going to do 2½. So I'm going to give myself a 1/4 inch on each side. So I'm giving myself a 1/4 inch leeway on the top side and a 1/4 inch on the bottom. So I'm writing that down because what you're going to do is you're going to take a little piece of tape, and I'll show you on my sewing machine. And you're going to mark with the tape that distance. So I'm going to turn my bag inside out because it's easier to sew on the inside of a circle. So here's my bag's inside out because I'm going to lay my bag in my sewing machine like this with my needle right here. And I'm going to sew 1¼ inch from the edge of the fabric all the way around, 1¼ inch. So you're going to sew whatever that distance is from the top of your fabric to the top of your hole. And then you're going to give yourself an extra 1/4 inch space. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
I'm hearing nothing, so I'm assuming you guys get it. So let's just focus on the first stitch, okay? The first stitch is from the top of the fabric. You're going to measure from the top of the fabric to the top of your hole, and you're going to stitch a 1/4 inch above your hole all the way around. And the way I'm going to do it is I'm going to use a piece of tape. I'm going to move my computer. Might want to just watch and try to get as close as possible so you can see. I'm sure many of you have done this in the past. So what I've done is I put a piece of tape here. So I measured from the needle to the edge of the tape. And I have to remove the tape because this is from something else. But for me, my measurement's 1¼ inch. So from the edge of the tape to the needle, I want that to be 1¼ inch. I don't know what your measurement's going to be because I don't know it should be similar to mine. I'm just measuring. I put my needle down so I can kind of see where it is. 1¼ inch back here. This way I don't have to mark my fabric. All I have to do is line my fabric up with the edge of that tape. So you can see right now I have the edge of my fabric lined up with the edge of the tape. And then when I sew, I'm just going to keep the edge of the fabric lined up with the tape. And then I'll have that perfect line. That's 1¼ inch from the top of the fabric. If I can get the camera better for you guys. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
I'm also making sure that this fold here is staying in the right place while I'm sewing. I don't want the lining to slip and move. So if you have one of those like magnets, some sewing machines have those little magnet markers that you can use. You can use that, or if you have a piece of Scotch tape or masking tape or whatever. I just had this art tape that I'm using. You could even use just Scotch tape. I know it's clear, but you can still kind of use that as a guide. So I finished sewing that stitch line all the way around, and it's creating a channel for the drawstring. So this is my stitch right here that goes all the way around. And I don't want to close my hole up. So it's right above my hole here, 1/4 inch above. Now I'm going to do another one 1/4 inch below the hole. So, because our drawstring has to go in here and we're making a channel for it. So that stitch line has to go all the way around the top. Now I'm going to do another one. So my second stitch line I measured is 2.5 inches from the top for me. So you guys measure yours and figure out what yours should be. You want it to be 1/4 inch below your hole opening. So from my needle to my tape, I'm going to have 2.5 inches. So that's way out there on my sewing machine, past the plate. 2.5. So I'm just pushing my fabric up to match the tape, and I'm gonna just look, eyeball it, double check. Is my needle in the right place? Yeah, that looks pretty good. It looks pretty good. My fabric is touching the tape here, and my needle is going down just below the opening of the hole. So this time around, it's a little trickier because there's so much fabric. You're sewing so deep into the bag. So it is a little tricky. So you just go slow. Because you got to keep the fabric flat while you're sewing the circle. Okay, so I finished sewing that second line all the way around. It looks like that. This is my lining, the inside. On the outside of my bag, it looks like this. And I have my hole right there. So I'm gonna take you guys back to the work table. So what I want to do now is iron. I'm going to press this whole bag. I can turn it right side out even now. And I'm just going to give it a really good press. We're almost done. We just have to add the drawstrings. It's small enough, it's big enough that you can actually use the end of your ironing board if you have your ironing board. Oops. Okay, your bag should be looking like this at this point, and it's nicely lined and got your stitches going around. So now you're going to take your drawstring, this cotton twill tape, and you guys got a big 2-yard length. So you have 2 yards. So I want you to cut it in half. I've already cut mine. So what you'll do is you'll take your big 2 yards, fold it in half like this, and then snip it. So the 1 yard is going to be for the other bag, and then the other yard is for this bag. So once you've snipped your 2 yards in half, you'll have 1 yard. You can put the other yard to the side for next time. And the 1 yard that you have, you're going to fold it in half. You'll take 1 yard and fold it in half and snip. So you should have 2 18-inch pieces. So I've already cut mine. I have these 2 18-inch pieces like that. And you'll need a safety pin because we're going to use the safety pin to push the drawstring through. So I'm going to grab my safety pin. Does anyone have any questions? Do you need me to stop for a little bit while you catch up, or? Speak now or forever hold your peace. So this last part is a little interesting because we have 2 drawstrings that we're sliding through. So I'll show you how to do that. So I put my safety pin on one of the strings and I choose a hole. Pick which side you want. It doesn't matter. Pick a side. And you just slide your safety pin into the hole and start pushing it through. We're going to push it all the way through until it comes out on this, till it comes out here on the other side. Just make sure you don't lose your tail. Sometimes when I'm doing this, my tail gets in there and I have to redo it. So you can pin the end to the fabric. So now I got to the other side where my other hole is. I'm just going to keep going. I want to pass it. So I gotta get through all those seam allowances there. So I'm just gonna pass that other side. I'm gonna keep going. Some of you maybe have made a bag like this before and you already know how to do this. Some of you, this might be your first time. Okay, so now I'm made it all the way around and okay, there. Okay, so once you've pulled it through, then you can take the safety pin off. And if your ends got all messy like mine did, you can just trim it off. So now I'm going to pull these out a little bit and I'm going to tie them in a knot. So you just put the ends together and you're going to make a little knot. So just like that, a little knot. And if you want to trim the edges off, you can. So now I'm going to do the other side. I'm going to take my other piece of drawstring and put the safety pin in. And now I'm going to go to the side. So this side I have my drawstring in. This side I don't have anything yet. That's the side I'm going to go to. And I'm going to start putting my safety pin in. And I'm going to feed it through and do the same thing I did with the other one. And I just love these little bags because, you know, if you want to reuse them every year at Christmas time, you don't have to buy wrapping paper. Wrapping paper is expensive, you know, and then you just rip it off and throw it away. And this is something you can reuse. Okay, so I've got my safety pin to the other side where my drawstring is. I want to go through. I just want to pass through. So it's a little tricky right here because you've got seam allowances, but I'm just going to keep going. So I got my safety pin through. I'm just passing.
Amy,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
leaving. Thank you.
All right. Bye, Raj. Take care.
Woo!
Thank you.
Bye. When I'm finished, I will show you. Okay.
All right. Thank you for joining. See you next time.
Yeah.
Take care, Raj. So I just passed that other side where we had the other drawstring and I kept going. And now I'm at my end and I'm gonna get it through. There we go. Pull it through. And take off your safety pin. And again, we're going to do the same thing. You're going to match up the ends and tie a little knot. I'm trying to push the knot as close to the ends as possible because the drawstring is not that long. If you make these bags again, I would make the drawstrings longer. Make them like 20 inches long. All right, so now I have my 2 drawstring bag. So when it's open, it looks like this. And then I just grab my 2 sides, I pull them closed, and it looks like that. You have a nice little gift bag. You could use these for a party and put like party favors in them, or I'm going to reuse mine for I'm going to use them for Christmas gifts, and then I'm going to just lay them flat and fold them up and put them in a drawer and then use them again next year. So, and they're so small and compact, they're easy to store. Gift wrapping paper is always so bulky and tall and awkward. Like this is easy to throw in a drawer and save till next year. Yeah, I think they're great for using for Christmas gifts or holiday gifts, whatever. So I hope you guys enjoyed learning how to make your lined drawstring bag. We have some time, you know, any questions? If you want me to go over something again, I can do that. Mary, how'd you do? Show me your bag. Put it like right in front of your face, so maybe I can see it. No, it doesn't work. That's so strange. And you can't turn your background off? I can't. I'm gonna stop recording because we're done. But I wish I could see your bag, Mary. I can't hear you. You got to turn your volume on.